All right, so we are going to go over pedigrees and Punnett squares. I know you've seen these things before, but we're just going to do a really quick review of some terminology that goes along with them, as well as how to put one of these together. So let's start with a pedigree. So what a pedigree is it's a way for us to actually see how relationships are within a family. And by relationships, we mean genetic relationships. So how do traits actually get passed on through a family? So just for an example, I'm going to do a pedigree for my family. So I have two brothers, an older and a younger brother. And the trait that I am going to map through is a widow's peak. So as you can see in my hair, I have a widow's peak. The other type of hairline that you can have is just a straight across hairline. A widow's peak is actually a dominant trait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my dad. So notice that males are going to be squares, and then my mom. So females are circles. They had kids together, so we are going to denote that with a line. A line does not mean marriage. It just means that they had kids together. The reason for this is because we do pedigrees with animals and we don't really have animal weddings. Okay? And then I'm going to draw a line down for my older brother, me, and my little brother. So once again, males are squares, females are circles. Now we're going to start to map the traits. My dad has a widow's peak. So if the person has that trait, we are going to shade in their box. My mom also has a widow's peak. My older brother has a widow's peak. I have a widow's peak. But my little brother does not. So now we need to map the traits. As I said before, a widow's peak is a dominant trait. So if you remember from middle school when making Punnett squares, we'll just use a W for our trait. So having widow's peak is going to be a capital W, and don't have widow's peak is going to be a lowercase w. My little brother does not have it, so he has little w, little w. That is his genotype. So the genotype is the letters or the alleles that they have. He had to get a little w from each of my parents, but they have a widow's peak. So that means that they each have a capital W and a lowercase w. My oldest brother has a widow's peak, so I know he has a capital W, but I don't know what his second letter is. It could be a question mark, or it could be a lowercase w or a capital W. So we're just going to put a question mark there because we don't know. Same thing for me. I have a widow's peak, but I don't know what my second letter is. It could be capital, could be lowercase, so I'm going to put a question mark. If I'm looking at my phenotype, this is what the trait looks like. Phenotype is the physical characteristic. So either having a widow's peak or not having a widow's peak. So this is how we put together a pedigree. Now I'm going to show this to you on a Punnett square. So if I'm making a Punnett square of this trait, I'm going to put one parent on top and one on the bottom. So we know that my dad is, we call that heterozygous. Hetero means different. And my mom is also heterozygous. So we are going to put those on the side of our Punnett square. Capital, lowercase, capital, lowercase. So in this box, I'll carry down the top, carry over the side, capital, capital. This would be homozygous. Homo means same, homozygous dominant. Heterozygous, heterozygous. Same, homozygous recessive. If I now want to make my genotypic and my phenotypic ratios, how I go about doing that for my genotypic ratio, I have 3 genotypes represented. Big W, big, little, little, little. My genotypic ratio would be 25% out of 4. So 25% big, big, 50% big, little, 25% little, little. So 25% homozygous dominant, 50% heterozygous, 25% homozygous recessive. That would be my genotypic ratio. If I wanted to make a phenotypic ratio, what does this look like? Remember, our phenotype is either having a widow's peak, these 3, or not having a widow's peak. So for my phenotypic ratio, having the peak would be 1, 2, 3 out of 4. So they would have a 75% chance of having a child that does have a widow's peak, and then no peak would be 25%. So they have a 25% chance of having a child without a widow's peak. So I hope that helps. Please let me know if you have any other questions about how to make a very basic pedigree or how to do ratios on a Punnett